Sorry?
One of the great problems was that the banks were borrowing short-term.
That's right.
And that's what really toppled the banks in the end. They were getting short-term loans, but lending them out long-term. Really?
Yeah, actually, in the banking system, well, there's the two sides. There's the fact that so many of their debts were denominated in foreign currencies. That's what made it impossible to save this banking sector, compared to, let's say, America could more or less bail out its banking sector, for better or worse, because it was possible to issue U.S. dollars. Of course, Iceland couldn't do this. The short-term versus the long-term lending, in Iceland's case, it's more a result of the way that the Central Bank of Iceland conducts policy. So, of course, when new credit is issued to the economy, it's always short-term credit. And, of course, that depresses interest rates in the very short run compared to what it is in the longer term. So the banks have their incentive system changed towards borrowing at this extremely low interest rate in the short term and funding longer-term investments. And that's really where we see this part of the crisis being propagated.
But then at the end, where everything is panic, you also write about that, where everything is people are really panicking. You write about the tragedy of Iceland, a part of the tragedy being the Russian loan that was suddenly mentioned.
Right.
This is something you write about.
Yep. Well, I think at the end it became obvious that Iceland needed short-term funding in a hurry. And then the question is, well, where do we get short-term funding? It definitely cannot come domestically from Iceland because there was no funding available whatsoever throughout that period. So who are we going to go to? We exhausted our friendly neighbors. So Scandinavia was not initially forthcoming with loans. Britain was definitely not forthcoming with loans in the early stages. The Federal Reserve as well was not forthcoming. So once you exhaust your friends, where do you turn to? Well, then you might turn to international organizations. Of course, the IMF was hesitant at first as well. And then you keep going through the list of your friends or list of possible lenders who you could possibly turn to until finally you meet some success, which they could have met with Russia until Iceland's friends at that point in time really came through to stop that from going through.
Have you looked into the current situation of whether the policies have really changed? What about the current situation of the central bank and the banks in Iceland?
Well, on the one hand, the current situation for the Central Bank of Iceland hasn't really changed. What we see now, the exact same deposit guarantees, the insurance scheme, everything is still in place. The Bank Act was never repealed or never altered since 2001. So this fundamental aspect, which Philip and I argue was a substantial cause of the change of incentives for Icelanders and for bankers in particular, was really altered. And if we don't change that incentive structure, if we don't get rid of these guarantees or modify them somehow, you're setting the stage for another replay or another repeat of what we saw in the past. On the other hand, Iceland did some good things. So, for instance, putting the banks into receivership instead of just outright bailing them out like what we saw in Ireland has probably benefited Iceland immensely over the last couple of years. In fact, the situation today in Iceland, although it's not optimal by any means of the word, it's incredibly better than what we see going on in, let's say, Ireland, or what we see going on in some other big banking sector economies that continued trying to support these oversized banking systems.
Many are of the view that the bankers basically were crooks. The financiers in Iceland were crooks, and they bankrupted the banks, and the government stood by and couldn't do anything about it. And the central bank.
There's the one way that you can look at it. You can blame the bankers, and I don't absolve them of responsibility. But at the same time, the bankers function under an incentive structure which is set for them externally. So the incentive structures that they face is, well, how much money are we going to lose on these bets? And how much money can we make if they go positive? Well, essentially what you have are privatized benefits. So every bank that made a loan, if it performed, they would have earned their profit on it. When the losses happen, the losses are what we would call socialized. Effectively, if the Central Bank of Iceland was going to step in, or if it came to it, the government of Iceland was going to step in to mitigate these losses or even bail out these banks, the losses would have been shared among every single Icelander. So we have a situation where you have high private profits for banks, low or non-existent socialized losses. So of course banks are going to increasingly take on risk. I think it's true to say that they're responsible. They were, after all, the avenue, the direct avenue that all the risk-taking, all the lending took place on. On the other hand, I would say, well, they were really only working within the framework of the structure that we gave them, and the institutional setting wasn't conducive towards them performing securely or sensibly.
What about the krona, the Icelandic krona, which is of course a problem within because it kept rising and rising and rising until we felt fabulously rich, and then it just collapsed overnight, and it's still very low. I can tell you that being in Madrid, for example, for an Icelander is very, very expensive at the moment.
A big difference from 3 years ago.
Yes, it is.
The kroner, well, when the crisis happened, one of the best things that happened to Iceland was the sudden devaluation in the kroner. Now, it's not to say it's a great thing that happened without pain, because obviously it's incredibly painful for Icelanders. The thing that the kroner devaluing did to the benefit of Iceland was it suddenly made exports popular again, or made exports reasonable for other countries to start purchasing from Iceland. Iceland had an economy which was heavily skewed towards banking. The banking model or the banking sector has been destroyed. I think it's fairly safe to say that. And the economy needs to rebuild itself on new legs and have a new foundation which is secure and conducive towards growth in the future. Now, I think when Iceland is searching for a way to rebuild this economy, you would say, well, what avenues of growth or what type of economy should we be in the future? It's probably going to be an export-based economy based on the natural resources that Iceland has, much like it was traditionally. We don't want to rebuild this economy, or I don't think there's many people in Iceland that really want to rebuild the economy along the lines of an oversized banking system again. Well, if you want to be an export-based economy, if you want to take advantage of your natural resources to try to rebuild your wealth, you need to make your exports conducive towards other countries buying them. And if a lower exchange rate is a necessary part of that, that's what we're going to have to take. So in a lot of ways, I think the devaluation was a positive thing. It might not seem like it at the moment because it caused an incredible amount of hardship, but over the longer term, it'll really help Iceland to get back on track.
So before the collapse, the krona was a problem, and after the crash, it's in a way a solution.
I would say so. In longer term, it was some short-term pain, might be a better way to put it, for some longer-term gains.
Yes, but in the end, your general conclusions are that the government, and the central bank, they are much to blame for what happened.
I would, if I had to summarize it, I would say the incentive structure by the guarantees that the Central Bank of Iceland put in place. And they put them in place, of course, from 2001 onwards, so they weren't recent developments, are to a large extent where I would put the root cause of Iceland's recession today with. If those guarantees had never been there, we wouldn't have seen an oversized banking sector to develop. We wouldn't have seen so much borrowing take place in foreign currencies. We wouldn't be in the situation we were in late 2008 or continuing to today.
So, David Howden, thank you for being with us from Madrid, Spain. You'll go out and enjoy the good weather.
Thank you. Will do. Take care.
Já, þetta bókin eftir sem hún myndist á eða litla hverið, það eftir Stefan Hessel. Stefan Hessel, ef að menn vilja skoða það, þessi bók, franska hver hérna, hneykslist. Dave Howden var þarna á Skype. Myndgæðin náttúrulega eins og þið eru, eins og allir vita sem að nota Skype. Við erum svona að feta okkur áfram með þetta, en menn vita af því að þetta ekki fullkomið, en efnið sem hann að tala er mikilvægt og merkilegt. Það eru að koma páskar. Silfureyðis ekki á dagskrá á páskadag, það þykir ekki við hæfi að ræða pólitík þá, og ég held að við getum alveg vel verið án þess. Þannig ég óska ykkur gleðilega páska. Ég verð hérna aftur svo sunnudaginn eftir páskaháttíðina.